step two, maybe a little bit too far, in my opinion, for Tom Pidcock. Call him a GC rider. He's the same age, more or less, as Tadej. Are you sure that he's capable of that? Maybe if that's going to be their marquee GC rider, maybe that's the basic problem that they're facing.
Nairo's one of these guys. I look at him and I'm like, I think you're done, man. You had a great run, a very prestigious, accomplished career. Definitely disgraced through the doping authorities and his decisions and those actions there.
It seems like for Ineos, they don't have that marquee GC rider now. They don't have a Tadej, they don't have a Jonas, a Remco, even though there have been a lot of rumors, or a Primoz. So, and maybe their problems are not that unique. Nobody has a rider of that caliber. So the GC battle for the foreseeable future might be something they should not focus on, and maybe that will go a long way in reassuring people that they're still a viable squad.
We've also seen what the inside of the AG2R car looks like. I don't really see him fitting in there. It looks tough.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Beyond the Podium. I'm Bob Roll. A little bit of a slow week. However, we're deep into the off season and plenty of news to go around, especially concerning Ineos and their continuing woes. Nairo Quintana, one of the last signings for next year's season, took a long time to get that squared away. And Neilson Powless, one of the most successful current American professional cyclists on the World Tour, weighs in about accessibility. And I'm joined today, I'm happy to say, by Brent Bookwalter. First things first, Brent, how are you recovering from the hurricane up there in North Carolina?
Oh, Bob, it's good to see you. It's been a tough go up here. I was telling TJ last week that it's been a long road already to recovery. A bunch of my favorite mountain bike trails, hiking trails are just destroyed, devastated. And even worse than that, businesses still closed. The greater city of Asheville still doesn't have water, potable water. A lot of destruction, a lot of businesses still not open. So, yeah, it's been a long road already getting out. It's going to take a long time, but we're starting to see some good signs of hope. And we had this nice sort of early winter weather that is generally still kind of sunny and crisp, and yeah, getting out and enjoying that before a little bit of snow flies. So not all bad. We're coming along. Thanks for asking. How are you doing? You're in Durango right now, right?
Durango is good, thanks. You must have restored the Wi-Fi, or you have your own satellite hookup to be on here.
I wish. No, it took a while. There's still shrapnel from electricity wires and power poles everywhere. And we basically had a crew come and just tack up a line, staple it to our house and said, this is going to have to be good enough for now. We'll figure out the rest of it later. So we're just taking what we can get.
All right. Well, best of luck continuing to recuperate from that, and best of luck to everybody. Christian and I talked about last week some of the maybe the most disappointing team when you look at the budget and the results from this whole season has been Ineos. And it seems like their woes are not 100% behind them. Tom Pidcock, let's talk about Tom Pidcock. We'll also talk about Luke Rowe, but let's talk about Tom Pidcock first. At least some of the sound bites are more positive than they have been from Tom Pidcock recently.
Yeah, I like what I've seen in Tom's quotes recently. Tom was one of the many riders at Roller Live, big sort of stage show where they try to dig out some good sound bites, and we got some good quotes out of Tom there. I love how Tom is starting to shift his thinking to that positive, hopeful point of view. What I still continue to just hear when I hear Tom's quotes, when I read about him, is that just the immense pressure of that Ineos organization. I know as a rider, I used to call him, a lot of riders used to call him the Death Star from Star Wars, this foreboding, like, dun, 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 dun. And
yes.
Yeah, you can feel that in Tom's quotes, that the pressure of the Death Star just, crushing down. And he's shouldering a big weight. They've really had to try to reinvent that organization after the horrific crash of Egan Bernal the past few years. And a lot of that pressure has fallen on the shoulders of Tom Pidcock. And he's still trying to do it all. What's amazing to me with Tom is he's still mountain biking at the highest level the past couple of years. He's still been riding cyclocross, and he's still good in the road racing calendar. He's still been good at the Tour de France the past few years, maybe not as good last year, but he's still young too. So all the potential in the world still from Tom Pidcock. It's just, he's carrying the weight of a nation and that massive, massive organization. And they're in a tough transitional pivoting moment right now where they've got to try to figure out. But I love that we're hearing Tom Pidcock say, hey, at the end of the day, I've got to get back to enjoying this. I've got to have fun, because if I'm not enjoying this, I'm not inspired. And then, it's all for nothing. So that's like the most sensical, brilliant soundbite that I've heard from Tom in a long time. And I think that'll bode well from him. Hopefully he can just get a little space and distance from that crushing pressure of Ineos and get back to having fun out there.
It seems like for Ineos, they don't have that marquee GC rider now. They don't have a Tade, they don't have a Jonas or Remco, even though there have been a lot of rumors, or a Primoz. So, and maybe their problems are not that unique. Nobody has a rider of that caliber. So the GC battle for the foreseeable future might be something they should not focus on, and maybe that will go a long way in reassuring people that they're still a viable squad.
Yeah, that's just it. Is unless you're talking about those big four riders, you're just fighting for scraps in the GC fight. And we heard Ineos talk last year, especially about shifting the mentality, wanting to be aggressive, wanting to be more of attacking. But you can tell when you're watching them, that is not the pedigree and the heritage that organization has. Going back to the Bradley Wiggins days, the Chris Froome days at Ineos, they were known for staring at the power meter, pushing set, having this very calculated, systematic dismantling of the entire peloton. And the reality is that organization just can't do it. And they don't have the leader to finish it off either. So I hope that we continue to see them pivot, adapt, race a little more aggressive. They've definitely made some changes and shake up in their management structure. And yeah, I got to hope and think that will bode well, and just in recultivating a new sort of thinking. But yeah, stepping away from the GC expectation, the odds are against you. You're fighting for third at best. And with the budget they have and the history they have, the expectation is still they should be right there with his Melissa bike and with UAE and today Pogacar. But the reality is they just don't have the firepower to do it. So yeah, Tom Pidcock, I think he can be a Grand Tour rider. He can be a GC rider there, but maybe not right now. I think getting him back to that mode where he doesn't feel like the world is falling apart if he doesn't execute a podium GC at the Tour de France, that's step one.
Step two, maybe a little bit too far, in my opinion, for Tom Pidcock. Call him a GC rider. He's the same age, more or less, as Tade. Are you sure that he's capable of that? Maybe if that's going to be their marquee GC rider, maybe that's the basic problem that they're facing.
Well, there's no one left. You have Carlos Rodriguez, you have Tom Pidcock, but even looking at the greater peloton, it's like, who are you going to get? We talk about Tade and Jonas, and they're so head and shoulders above everyone else that, we talk about Tade, and that we're seeing this once in a lifetime, a spanning generational marvel of what he can do. So putting even Tom Pidcock as a reference point up against Tade, no, I don't. He's not gonna outclass Tade at the Tour de France or Jonas. But yeah, at a Grand Tour when those guys aren't starting, if he is fighting for a podium, I think that's a worthy cause. And going back to that quote we heard from him of like getting back to what I enjoy, I think Tom's got to listen to his heart. If he decides in his heart of hearts that he is inspired to fight for a podium at a Grand Tour, maybe when Pogacar and Vingegaard aren't there, then go for it. Find some enjoyment and some love and some fire in that podium battle at another Grand Tour. And that's something he could still hang his hat on. That's a lot different than being an Olympic gold medalist in the mountain bike race.
One thing that we try to mention when we talk about Ineos is Egan Bernal and his devastating crash a few years ago. And it seems like they're still trying to rehabilitate Egan, get him back up to the highest level, which throughout his career until then, it was maybe the best in the world at Grand Tour racing. That's 2019, going back a ways now for that. But how do you see Egan Bernal fitting into the grand scheme of things for Ineos, or perhaps in his career? I mean, that was, almost, I'm not sure that many people could have survived the impact, and to come back and race again is very impressive. But to get back to the highest level, which is most people's question at this point, um, any chance of that happening for
I
Bernal and the
it,
Ineos team?
it's a tall order. I think like one of the things we talked about at last year's Tour de France was this just rampant progression of the level and the entire peloton, and especially these young riders just elevating, year after year, but even month to month to month of the season. It's like the level just keeps rising. So to be an injured rider where you've lost months or more than months, you've lost your recovery is measured in years, to be out that whole time and to be rebuilding and then enter the sport again, that is all of a sudden it's not what it was when you left, essentially before the injury. That is just a tall order, and I would wager more than a tall order, really an unrealistic one. I think Egan can get back to his a better form, better condition than he had pre-crash. But the problem is for him is that doesn't mean that he's as successful as he is then. Because as we keep seeing, the level and the standard is just ratcheted up exponentially year after year. And to not only get back and make himself better than he was before, but to get to this new level after taking that gap, I'd say it's sort of a mission impossible. But it is still inspiring to see him fight and pushing on. What a testament to his character and just that his commitment to improve. We see sometimes you see GC superstars, one big injury, that's it. You don't see him suffer, you don't see him scrap, you don't see him riding that number 7 on an 8-man squad in a team just to like come back and fight through that. And Bernal, he's done that now on the path and the road to recovery. So sentimentally, I hope that we see him win some races with that panache and that class and that
Absolutely.
style that we saw during the best points in his career.
Absolutely. Anything in Dave Brailsford evolution with the parent company, the sponsor Ineos? He was the mastermind of the whole program. Now that he's transitioned away from the cycling team, is got, in my opinion, that's got to have something to do with without that strong leadership cycling sport where you have to suffer like an animal, and it's easy unless you have that inspiration to just ratchet it back a little bit. Maybe without Dave B, that's a big part of what the team is facing.
Yeah, I think without a doubt. I think the show that you and Christian did a couple of weeks ago, Bob, you guys talked about Dave B in that organization, going back to Team Sky and then Ineos and the huge role he had in there, and that he did manage from the top down, and he inspired, or
Yes.
some people would maybe even scare or strike fear and motivation into the riders from the top down. And that will have an effect now that he's not there. That he was there during Bernal's most glorious years and glorious time. And as a rider, when you're back after an injury, like we just said, it's not just the sport and the level and the competitors and the power output that's different, but the whole organization that he's operating with now is rapidly changing, and going over a lot of turnover. So a lot of just foreign, difficult environmental dynamics to navigate as a rider who's coming back from injury. And for Egan Bernal personally, it would probably bode well for him if Dave B could just slot back into the Egan program and shepherd him through. But as we saw, it's a high profile, high stakes, big sporting organization where results are demanded, and like we see in professional ball sports, when the performance does not occur and the wins don't get tallied up, a lot of times it's off with his head to the people at the top. And in cycling, that doesn't traditionally happen. A lot of times it's the riders, the first one on the chopping block. Not a lot of overhauls and upper management through the teams. But Ineos is doing that. So I actually say,
Yeah.
good for them that they are making the change. They don't like where they're at. They don't like the results they're getting. Their sponsors want a little more. So don't just chop off all the riders. Like, go to the top. Let's reinvent from the top down, and hopefully for them, some kind of magic gets rolling this year.
It seems like they've started that process with Steve Cummings, and I did I did note a little bit of tension between him and Tom Pidcock in the Netflix special. So, Tim, when that happened, it seemed like Tom Pidcock changed his attitude pretty quickly. Maybe some tension there between Cummings and Pidcock is at the root of the whole thing, maybe.
I think so. Yeah, that was an entertaining drama to watch unfold from afar. And I was watching that through my lens of having been a teammate and also a roommate at races with Steve Cummings. And Steve-O, as we called him, I really grew to like the guy and love him as a teammate. But he was an acquired taste for me too. And it took a little bit of growing pains to get used to him and work well together as teammates. And I've stayed in touch with him a little bit as he's become a director and worked his way up through that organization. And yeah, it was clear that their style of communication, of execution out on the road, and I think even their ideas of how success could be achieved by the team were different. There was a bit of a disconnect there. And Steve Cummings, he's what I appreciate about him. He sort of says it like it is, and he'll say it right to your face. And often a star like Tom Pidcock, he's got people all over his court telling him everything he wants to hear, saying, "Oh, Tom, you look amazing, super skinny. Look at all those gold medals. Look awesome, man." But yeah, Steve Cummings is going like, "Hey, man, look in the mirror. Like you gotta up your game. This is what you need to do. This is from my point of view." And that was his job, and that was his role there. So yeah, difficult. As we see in the top level of sports, it's not just managing the athletes; it's managing the people. And I think the Cummings versus Pidcock dynamic was a real personal human personality trait issue. And hopefully that's good for Tom. I'll be interested to see where Steve Cummings ends up. I think he's still an asset for really any organization in cycling. He's a smart guy, and man, he was a crafty bike racer too. So I hope we'll see him back.
Well, one thing that shocked me in this whole reorganization of Ineos is that a rider who I thought was going to be with the team, with the organization permanently, just retired, very successful, by the way, Luke Rowe, is going to be working. They said for somebody else, and I was like, oh gosh, like who could it be? AG2R. What do you make of that? I can't. It's the most inexplicable thing I've heard in a long time.
That was a surprise. Yeah, Luke Rowe is a modern day franchise player. I mean, he's been, 13 years. Bob,
Yes.
when we turn on the tour next year, if we see him in those AG2R covers, you're going to be like double, triple taken, because I think all of us watching TV, we're just not going to compute that he could be wearing a French team jersey. Like,
Crazy.
no way. Yeah, it's just I mean, his whole wardrobe is black. I mean, Team Sky, Ineos, like the guy only has one color in there. So it's going to be weird to readjust our eyes in that color palette for Luke Rowe. But what a grab for AG2R.
Yeah.
I think
so. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, big pickup for that organization. And yeah, I mean, Luke Rowe, he was the ultimate road captain and teammate. I hated riding against that guy. Yeah, the years when we were working for Cadell Evans and he was riding for Wiggins and then Froome, he'd be all nice, chatting you up, buddy at the back of the peloton. And then when the race is on at the front, he would put you into the curb without even, thinking twice about it. And the dude had some elbows and he had a bit of a headbutt and yeah, pretty savage bike racer, but also brilliant tactically. But what I'm interested to see with Luke Rowe is, one of the reasons I think he was brilliant was seeing him, capitalize on that British culture that organization had. And he alluded to that in some of his comments about moving to AG2R, and that he did it because it was uncomfortable, or it is uncomfortable, and it does scare him, and he doesn't know how it's going to go, which I really appreciate in terms of a human growth perspective and getting the most out of himself, finding his limits. But I mean, you've watched him a long time, Bob. Do you see Luke Rowe speaking French? And we've also seen what the inside of the AG2R car looks like.
Yes.
I don't really see him fitting in there. It looks tough.
I mean, Ben O'Connor is a good example of somebody that's a very good cyclist that is just uncomfortable with the way the organization runs the team. And Ben O'Connor's changed team after getting second in the Vuelta his best result in his professional career. So Luke Rowe, I have a feeling like English-speaking riders are pretty similar across the board. I mean, there's obvious differences personally, but culturally, it seems like you have this can-do, have to do type of attitude that a lot of the French teams. And I'm going to pose this question to you. I always believed it was because they had almost an automatic invite to the Tour de France. You're one of the best French teams, you're going to the Tour. Not true for the rest of the world. And for Luke Rowe to try to fit into that sort of entitlement, if you will, to use an uncomfortable term maybe in describing that, hardworking, and they've made big changes, and maybe this is another step in their evolution to get away from that sort of automatic selection for the Tour de France. For the Citroën, by the way, AG2R Decathlon Squad. Decathlon now is their more common name.
Yeah, total cultural shift, like you said, and that will be part of the challenge. Is that, yeah, as a British rider in the sport, even an Anglophile that you're speaking English, you go into the mainland of Europe, you know how it is. You're interspersed with the Spanish, the French, the Italians, the Germans. Like it's challenging as an English speaking rider, and as a French rider riding for a French team, and you have the world's biggest race in your home country. There is a sort of like ease and luxuriousness that no other rider really ever gets to relate to. But I think the fact, like you said, Bob, well said, in that the fact that they are thinking outside the box, the easy thing for them to do would be to keep having all their same French sport directors they've always had. But they recognize, like, they want more, and they also recognize that they had a really good season last year. But as Luke Rowe even commented, they recognized that they were even a little bit lucky, like around 30 wins. They looked at those wins, they break them down, and they're like, well, these wins weren't really all like guaranteed off execution in our roster. It's like we had some magic kind of fall into place, which, hey, that's part of cycling. But they recognize that what got them to that many wins last year, they can't keep doing that and expect to get 30 again, or 40 or 50. They're like innovating, changing, and progressing. So that mentality to like improve, that to me, for my career, that's not traditional French mentality. So maybe this is really like a turning point of decathlon being really one of the powerhouse teams of the World Tour.
Well, I think we'll see plenty of Luke throughout next year's season. And actually, it'll give us a chance to maybe learn more about French cycling and the culture within those teams and the challenges that they face. Let's talk about Nairo Quintana, veteran, 36 now. He got sideways with the anti-doping authorities that derailed his career for a while, was thrown a lifeline by Movistar, came back. Maybe he hoped for more from 2024. And maybe the last World Tour signing just a couple days ago, Nairo has re-signed for next year with Movistar. I thought that maybe it would be time to hang up the wheels for Nairo, but he's giving it another go. And what do you make of the whole Nairo Quintana situation? And will he win any more bike races on the Movistar squad in 2025?
Yeah, Nairo's one of these guys. I look at him and I'm like, I think you're done, man. You had a great run, a very prestigious, accomplished career. Definitely disgraced through the doping authorities and his decisions and those actions there. So to come back, oh, it's hard. Like we were just saying with Egan Bernal, to come back after a time away and hit this sport that has all of a sudden been turbocharged even further and at a level that even at your best wouldn't make you competitive. He's really, really going to be up against it. But, we saw him last year. Even he wasn't just, DNFing. He wasn't just phoning it in. He was actually trying and gritting his teeth and going for it. So that, I think of two things when I see that. One is that he still loves it. He's still motivated. He wants to vindicate himself from that sort of disgraced period of his career and that sanction. But then also, I also think, like, for some of these riders, it's like, well, what else do I do? Like what? And it's a little bit of a, like, this is who I am. This is the only thing I can do. And I don't know Nairo that well, so that I can't pass that judgment on him. I can't say where he's at, but I hope for his own sake that it's the prior and there's an inspiration there. There's a motivation and a contribution too. Like, let's face it, Movistar is not the team that it was a few years ago. So if he can help bring some of that sort of, winning magic, that sort of like pursuit of perfection, if he can sort of bring that back, granted it's going to have to be in an evolved state because, hey, the sport's evolving, and they're not one of the teams that is evolving the quickest, from my point of view. So what do you think, Bob? I mean, you've called a lot of Nairo's most triumphant moments. We didn't see him, didn't talk about him for a long time, and now you're going to be saying his name again this year.
That's a good question. A lot of the most thrilling races that I've commentated on, Nairo and Quintana is involved in those. I remember the Vuelta a few years ago when he was going head to head with Chris Froome, and he was able to get the better of Chris Froome when it seemed like Chris was, the greatest stage racer of that generation. So whether or not that talent is translatable to today's cycling, that's the main question. And he has to make huge improvements to be competitive. And how Nairo is going to do that, no wins 2024 for Nairo. And I don't think I don't know what race he could win. I don't see how the stars could line up that he could do so. A smaller stage race that finish on top of a mountain. There's 50 guys desperate to win those. And when those guys are stacking themselves up against Tadej Pogacar, when he won 25, 26 races, he won almost every race he entered, even the smaller races. There's very few chances. And I see Nairo more as a sponsorship card that Movistar is playing, because it's a massive worldwide corporation with interests across the world. And Nairo is a big star in Colombia, no doubt about that. And no matter what he does, he'll always garner attention. And so, whether his rehabilitation results-wise translates to what he can do for a sponsor at this point, I think it's mostly of the latter, that it's a sponsorship consideration, which fair game. If that's that's why you have a sponsor. That's why you get paid, is to promote the products that they're trying to sell. And that's across the board. So I wish Nairo the best of luck. I hope he can win some races, and Movistar could use the help. That's for sure.
Yeah, let's see it again. I want to see that victory salute, the Movistar phone call across the line from
That's
Nairo.
Right. That's right. All right. An American superstar, one of the best riders our country's ever produced, is Neilson Powless, races for EF. Recently quoted as saying he wished that cycling was more accessible. And we've talked about this a lot over the years. And I'm curious. Everybody knows my creation myth, how I got into the sport. But I want to know about yours. How did you find professional cycling and then ascend to the very highest level?
Oh, yeah, that takes me way back. I found bike racing through mountain biking, local mountain bike races that I literally just saw a sign for. I always would ride my little mountain bike through our little neighborhood trails. And our next door neighbor took me to my first mountain bike race. I started as a small kid in the kids race as a beginner. And I literally just worked my way up through the ranks in Michigan, where I grew up, in the Fun Promotions mountain bike series. And then was racing some national races on the mountain bike as a junior. I did my first world championships, and then collegiate cycling, got a little more into road racing. One big team where I grew up from back home, Advantage Benefits, Bissell, Endeavor, really great supporters of cycling still to this day. They created a pro road team that I slotted into. And then, that was it. I just chiseled my way up through the ranks. So very, very systematic, but arrived there through the mountain bike, which I believe was part of Neilson Powless's story as well.
Yes, that's
mountain
right.
bike and triathlon. So I still see that as a parent now myself. I look at my kids and I'm pretty excited to see them riding trails and go ride trails with them. But I cringe when I think about sending them out onto the road and the open roads and, crazy drivers, and I'm be happy if they would just stay in the forest and the mountains for a little bit. So Yeah, I still see mountain biking as a great pathway into the sport. And I think Nielsen is another example of his path that I think has been a positive for accessibility is the NICA High School Mountain Biking League that is pervading and gaining a lot of momentum through the USA right now. And that was something that was not available when I was a young rider. So to actually have interscholastic high school mountain biking, yeah, we're already seeing stars get churned out. Mountain bikers, Chris Blevins, Kate Courtney as well from NICA, and I believe Nielsen was also involved in that at an early age too, in some of the forefront of those programs. So obviously, like that, it's one of those quotes. It's like no matter how much accessibility we have, you always want more. And just by virtue of needing this equipment, a bike, like there are some pretty big hurdles to entry into the sport. But Bob, your community there in Durango, like they've done pretty well with that too. It seems like maybe part of that's part of the culture of the people who just end up in Durango, but it's a pretty accessible
Yeah.
sport in those parts.
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up. In Durango, almost every kid knows about Durango Devo, the mountain bike program, throughout the summer. It's legendary. The athletes it's produced is Chris Blevins, Sepp Kuss, of course, came from Durango Devo. NICA, the National Interscholastic Cycling Association, started a little bit after Durango Devo, but that's the high school, a chance where you have organized races off-road, obviously. I think that your point that like having your kids out on the open roads racing and training in the United States of America today is maybe the biggest hurdle that we're facing. Not just distracted drivers or aggressive drivers, but drivers that are that hate to see a cyclist on the road. They think it's an impediment to going where they want to go more quickly. So maybe that obviously Western Europe doesn't face those same kind of restrictions or fears that it was very common with American parents, myself included. So how, I mean, that's an obvious problem that we have to overcome it. And I'm not sure. I've been racking my brain, as limited as it is, how to find a safer way for kids to enjoy cycling in the United States.
Yeah, without a doubt, the road safety is an issue, and now even the I'd say like the race scene and the development pathways in the USA are also a restrictor because even when I was young, I wasn't interested in road racing initially, but I could see the path. There was a very robust national race calendar that I could say, like, wow, maybe, one day I can do the one that's closest to my house and just try to finish it. And then that one is connected to these other 12 races throughout the season. And then I can dream and envision myself like going up that pathway. That road calendar just doesn't exist here anymore. So in terms of an opportunity to dream, aspire, and even for parents navigating that landscape of like how do you support a young athlete in developing through the ranks, I think that's part of the accessibility too. But at the same time, like I think there are programs that are getting more kids on bikes. I know I'm going to shout out to a women's rider specific program called Little Bellas, which was put together from one of my old mountain bike teammates, Leah and her sister, Leah Davidson and Sabre Davidson. And to see what they're doing for young female riders to give them access to instill confidence and use the bike for not just a professional development tool, but like Nielsen said, just accessibility. That is
Yeah.
incredible. So yeah, there's still some silver linings and advancements there. And a rider like Nielsen, like he has the power and the sway and the influence to do that. And that quote that you're referencing, I believe it was an article in Men's Health with Nielsen where they talked to him about that. He mentioned how he hopes at the end of his career when he retires and has more time in the US, he'll have more time to do that. But I'm going to send him a message and be like, Nielsen, the time is now, man. Your mugs all over the Tour de France, you're front and center. You have all the influence, the inspiration, and I'll give Nielsen credit. He is already doing that. He founded a Gran Fondo ride to support, I believe it supports NICA this year. So he is giving back. He is connecting with the community. And yeah, the more of these American superstars that we have that can sort of fund, inspire, and help youth dream, and also show parents that pathway to accessibility, the better. But that is challenging these days more than ever because the demands from the American rider to move their family completely over to Europe. It's a huge commitment. Even when I was young in the early stages of my career, we had that American scene. I'd come back to the US for, 30 race days, 20 race days during the year. So to have that connection, to give back, to try to improve that accessibility was a little easier. So yeah, Nielsen's up against it a little harder in terms of that fight and that very virtuous vision to give back and make it more accessible. But I say go, Nielsen. Go now. Go while you're the best.
Maybe we'll wait a little while till gasoline starts running out, and then people will be on their bicycles a lot more.
Dependent on bikes. That's the only way, right? You have to do it.
Absolutely. I mean, in the Netherlands and Denmark, everybody rides. I think in Denmark, when we had the tour start there a couple of years ago, more bicycles than cars now, more miles on bicycles than cars. And that, I feel like, has translated into the results they're having amongst their elite athletes on the international scene.
Yes. Yeah. Netherlands, Denmark. But again, it's like a chicken or the egg. They have the infrastructure, they have the cultural appreciation and the value for it. So yeah, all the parents can put their kids on bikes and ride them to school because there's a safe bike lane. There's dedicated lanes and sidewalks and bike paths where it is treacherous here. I mean, I know Durango's pretty good by USA standards, but I imagine there's still plenty of roads around Durango where you would not want to be taking a little kid out on a bike.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hats off to Nielsen Paulus for his continued effort for accessibility. I will remind everybody, it's sort of the slow season. We've survived the silly season, the transfer season. Now we're into the off season, big time. So if you have any questions, we would love to hear from you. We would love to answer them. And Brent, thanks so much. Good luck. And I hope everything is back together as soon as possible, infrastructure-wise, out there where you're at. And I will see you soon. Maybe at Nielsen's Grand Fonda, we could meet there and ride together next year.
Let's brain trust it. Let's do it. Yeah, we need a reunion, Bob. I haven't seen you in person. Either I got to get to France in July, or we got to find somewhere else to meet. But I enjoyed this chance to catch up with you.
Thanks, Brent. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.